Good afternoon. Welcome to the Louisiana Federation for Children webinar, Serving Special Needs Students During COVID-19. You may post your questions or comments using the comments section on YouTube or Facebook. Your host for today's discussion, AFC-LFC Grassroots Coordinator, Tiffany Crawford.
Good afternoon. How are you all doing today?
Great.
Good.
That is great. I am so happy to be here with you all to talk about servicing special needs students in the midst of the pandemic, and to be here with our phenomenal panelists that will be educating us on some of the challenges and some of the successes that exist in the midst of the pandemic. So Ms. Linda Stone, the principal of Hope Academy, is here with us, and she has over 30 years experience educating special needs students in East Baton Rouge and Livingston parishes. Mr. Christopher Dennis is the special education coordinator for Lawrence D. Crocker College Prep and has worked for over 11 years educating children with disabilities. And last but certainly not least, we have Mr. Paul Dauphin, the Louisiana State Director for the Louisiana Federation for Children, American Federation for Children, that has worked diligently to advance school choice throughout the country. So happy that you all are here, and this is going to be a fruitful discussion, and hope that we're going to be able to give somebody some information that will help them as we travel this COVID-19 pandemic journey. A lot has been said about the challenges that exist with educating children, especially when you consider some of the adjustments that school leaders, educators, families have had to make during the pandemic for safety. So we're just going to talk about how do we do this? How do we continue to do this to make sure that all of our children are successful, and to make sure that we have resources that help our children with special needs. So I want to start the conversation by each of you giving a description of your school and what that special needs program is in your school. And I'm going to start with ladies first. So Ms. Linda, if you could talk about Hope Academy and your special needs program.
Absolutely. I'm glad to be with you today. We've been in existence for 14 years. We have a two-track system. One is working toward a high school diploma, and the other track is our children who are more diverse learners. We call that our PACE classes, P-A-C-E, Practical, Academic, and Community Education. We have served children from 10 parishes at some point. We have a wide geographic area we serve. So it is a non-public school. We have students who are private pay. We also have students who are on a couple of the scholarship programs. Along with our school, we also have an ABA clinic for kids with autism called Bridges Learning Solutions on our campus.
Oh, that is awesome. And how many students do you have?
Well, we have 75 or so right now.
75 students. That is awesome. And Mr. Dennis?
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. And thank you for the introduction. My name is Christopher Dennis. I'm the Special Education Coordinator at Lawrence D. Crocker College Prep in New Orleans. We are an open enrollment charter school serving grades pre-K through 8th grade. Currently, we're around 415 students, which is a little bit small for us. We're typically a little over 500. Of that population, almost 100% free and reduced lunch, almost 100% students of color or come from families who identify as being of color. High poverty, as a lot of open enrollment charter schools are. Our student population, of the 400 or so that we have currently, around 15 to as many as 20% of our students are identified as receiving special education and related services, and probably an additional 20 to 25% of our students are identified as being English language learners. So your typical open enrollment charter school with the diverse student population and all of the rewards and challenges that go with it. This is my second year as the special education coordinator here. Previously, I was the special education instructional manager, focusing strictly on just improving the academic programming of our students who receive special education related services. We've recently, over the last 2 years, moved into a more inclusive model. We relied more on pull-out and specialized instruction prior to my tenure in this role. But over the last 2 years, we've expanded our co-teaching practices as well as our inclusion for the majority of our students receiving special education services. And we're really proud of that because we've actually seen a lot of benefits from the more inclusive model that we've been using over the last 2 years.
That is awesome. You know, a lot has been said about what the pandemic highlighted as it relates to how we educate children. And I guess I'm gonna just throw a question out here. Are we able to successfully educate children with special needs during COVID?
Well, I'll tell you first off that I applaud the teachers for taking on this challenge. This happened unexpectedly. We had to just scramble and make it work. My teachers at Hope Academy did a fabulous job, and they still continue to do. We didn't know what would happen or how long this would last. We didn't know how families would react. So at first we were completely virtual starting in March. And then we were able to make many improvements to the building and policies and procedures so that we felt like opening up in August was safe. We did that with all these precautionary things in place. And about half of our students chose to be virtual at that point. So the teacher teaches during that time in a fashion that's synchronous. So she or he may be teaching to the children in the class and also those that are on the virtual program. Special needs kids require a lot of extra attention. They would not have qualified for that program otherwise. When you have a diverse learning population, they learn differently. They need more attention one-on-one. So it's been a real challenge. Now our teachers have learned the technology for the virtual. And so I'm just so happy that we've done the best we can.
Mr. Dennis, do you have the similar experiences?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I second everything that Ms. Stone has spoken to. When we first left, and I think it was March 16th, which seems like 100 years ago, we didn't know when we'd be seeing our students again. We originally thought it was going to be a 2-week kind of thing, and we'd be back in time to take the LEAP test, which obviously it didn't work out that way, unfortunately. But similar to what Ms. Stone said, I'm really proud of how much we've all learned in this short period of time and used this as an opportunity to expand our practices and things that I hope don't go away when we do go back to normal as much as we ever will be back to normal. Because I think the inclusion of technology across the student's instructional day, student access to different materials from home is something that I really hope can continue as we move forward. Now, as far as can we successfully educate our student body in this current situation, there's a huge spectrum. And I wish I could say that 100% of our students were getting exactly what they need virtually, or currently, I should have spoken to this before, we're in a hybrid schedule. So our kids pre-K through 4 have the option to be in person 5 days a week. We have 5th and 7th have the option of being in person on Mondays and Tuesdays, and on Wednesdays and Thursdays, 6th and 8th have the option to be in person. And similar to what Ms. Stone spoke about, it's about a 50-50 split of students who have the option to be in person versus virtual. So we're sort of on that hybrid kind of schedule. And similar to what Ms. Stone said, our teachers are teaching synchronously in person and virtual when those given days when students are in person. And so I wish I could say that 100% of our students were getting 100% of what they need 100% of the time, but that's not always reality, particularly with, developing this new technology, having to reach students remotely. And that's not necessarily a forte of some of our students and families, like technologically.
Right.
For both educators, what determines whether one of your students, and especially at Crocker, special needs students, are educated virtually or in person? What determines that? Or does all of your students have to at some point do the virtual thing?
Did you want to answer that?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead, Linda.
Oh, I'll answer that.
Yeah.
We determined by what the family feels comfortable with. Many of our kids with special needs have special medical conditions that they're more susceptible to, being exposed to the virus. And so we've allowed the families to decide.
Christopher?
Similarly, it's the family choice. Parents were given a screener in August where they were indicating, and it goes quarter by quarter on a rolling basis. So they have the right to opt in or out of in-person learning each quarter. And we have been able to make exceptions for some of our students with low incidence disabilities that can go to school 5 days a week as opposed to the 2 days that other students in their grade level would be, just because their particular program lends itself more to in-person learning than virtual. However, we do have similar students with low incidence disabilities who are 100% virtual at the parent request, who are thriving based on their individual programming. So there really is a spectrum.
And I know, Christopher, you mentioned technology a few times, and I'm just curious to know how was it trying to when everything was just virtual before you were able to transition into a hybrid format? How was that adjustment with the children adapting to an online or virtual environment? What was the learning curve and the adjustment curve, and was it a period where you were able to say, we got it, or is it still it's still a work in progress?
I don't think that we got it moment has come yet. I'll let you know when it does. But we were fortunate that we were allotted, I want to say 250 new Chromebooks from NOLA Public Schools and almost as many hotspots. And so we were able to sort through our families based on need and get at least the hardware in the family's hands over, I'd say, towards the end of what would have been the end of the school year and the beginning of the summer. So by the time we started our virtual year on August 2nd, most of our families at least had the hardware. Now that was only half the battle, because then you're trying to teach remotely how to access Google Classroom and Zoom and Google Meets. So we had a few different parent FAQ meetings virtually, of course, where we were going through explicitly how their students and families are going to access different parts of their students' school experience. That started, probably a few days before August 2nd when we started our first day, and is still going on to this day. I can't tell you last time I had a day where my phone didn't ring and I was trying to talk a family through a tech issue, but it's part of the job, of course. And but yeah, I mean, like I was saying about our teachers, our students and families deserve a ton of credit too for how adaptable and flexible they've stayed through this whole process, learning a complete new way to do school.
Right.
Yeah, I laugh at the to talk about the Google Classroom, because I have a nephew that I help him with school, and boy, that Google Classroom is rough. And I use a computer every day, so it is rough. I understand. Ms. Linda?
Well, one of the things we did similar to what he's speaking to is we did some surveys to see, and then, do you need a device? Do you have internet? Those kinds of questions. And then we had, by appointment, the families did a drive up, and we would hand them whatever it was, whether it was a textbook or a Chromebook or such. We pride ourselves on having a lot of technology, but it seems like we just never had enough. And of course, Chromebooks, you can't get them. They're on back order forever. So we made do with what we had, tablets, iPhones, whatever the family had. Then there were some families who just weren't at that level or didn't feel comfortable using the internet for that. So what we did for that was we had drop-off pickup things with, textbooks, or we'd run off work for a family worksheet wise rather than going online for it. So when you have a special needs child in your school, you go by their IEP.
Mhm.
Everything's individual. And that's the same thing with this. You look at that individual family and see what works for them, and we try to accommodate. And if a family or a student or a parent needs help understanding how to do something, our teachers would go above and beyond to do a little individual tutoring session to show them how to work something or an academic problem they were having trouble with. So you just meet their needs when you can,
Mhm.
the best way.
And recognizing that there's such a vast spectrum relative to children and what their needs are, do you find that if you had to, I guess, do an assessment, has it been closer to just a little harder or next to impossible to adjust? And I understand, but from talking to both of you, I know that you have had successes with adjusting and making sure that your children are getting the most you can give them in spite of a challenging situation. But what would be the assessment? Oh my goodness, this is harder. Oh goodness, I'll be so glad when I get back to the classroom.
I think it has been very difficult. Our students need a connection. There's nothing like a teacher in front of the child. We have done the best we can, but I still think that maybe they're not getting everything that we wish we could give them.
The same for you, Christopher?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure if there's anything that we could say we're going to look at empirically and say this is or is not working for the student. One of the biggest things that we're looking at is student engagement in virtual learning and just their submission of things that are required to be submitted digitally. And we recently formed an attendance task force that's looking at not just your day-to-day absences or presence, but also your within the school day with different online classes, what they are and are not logging into, and making sure students are accountable for that. And that's been a huge undertaking for our attendance task force, but something critical just to, like I said, the accountability to the students and families, just making sure that they understand the importance of what we're doing. So I think the first piece of data we're really going to look for is have those numbers come down, since we've been trying to do a little bit more with attendance and participation.
One of the challenges we're about to face next week is our secondary school children, young adults, some of them, do their midterms. And how's that going to work? We have standardized testing that we do every spring. How is that going to work? So there's still things that we have to figure out as we go.
I certainly understand that. And quite honestly, it's been challenging across the board, and we hear the stories, we know what they are. When all of the children, all children, families are adjusting and having challenges. But what is, I guess, would be the difference? Every student has its challenges with adjusting, I guess, with a virtual and a hybrid, and some, even adjusting with having to, one way I'm here, and then the next time I'm in class. And there are some students in our city that sometimes during the day, on certain days they're at home, other days they're at school. So what challenges may present themselves for our special needs population that is not really a factor for other children?
I think the anxiety level is there. It's something that they're not used to. They may miss their peers and their teacher and their paraprofessional. There are some families who have no knowledge of how to do this. They may have several children at home, and how do you have enough devices? How do you help each child? What if you're at work? There are just so many things that come into play for these families. I worry for them that they're either missing work or not there for their kids enough to help them. So that level of independence for students with special needs, of course, that's not as always in place. And so asking a student to log on and go virtual without a parent right there to guide is tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, a question that just occurred to me, and I guess it's more just thinking about your experience through COVID. Do either of you have a overcoming COVID story that just really speaks to the resilience of either a particular student or a family that with everything that we faced since March that, they overcame.
I can think of one student and family in particular. We have a now 8th grade male student who is diagnosed with having Down syndrome as well as autism. And last year, as part of his maturation progress, he got pretty physical to the point where we weren't sure if our school was the right place for him at this time, just out of fear of him hurting himself or someone else. And we had several conversations with the families, and we're networking with other agencies to provide them some wraparound support and to try to get some people like ABA therapists and things along those lines into the school to do more for this particular student. But went away for COVID at, like I said, the middle of March. The feeling was very much that we were concerned with this child's safety and his ability to be educated in a traditional school setting. His family has opted to keep him completely virtual at this time, and he is doing wonderfully with all of his online service delivery as well as his academic lessons. He's doing some things that we had never seen him do in person, as far as using verbal language and identifying some letters, numbers, colors. And I think home being, in this unique case, a little bit less stimulating of an environment, where that's very much the opposite for most of our students. But for him, I think just having the one-on-one attention from his sister, who helps him a lot, and just being in that environment has been really great for him, to the point where we're dying for him to come back in person, just so we can see the progress that he's made and then see that continue in a more dynamic setting.
We have a couple of students who are habitually late. And so just rolling out of bed and turn on the computer, is easier. They're not tardy anymore. Or boys who don't always get along with their peers and are physical on the playground with them. That can't happen if they're home in their bedroom or their living room.
Right.
So we can focus more on the academics now instead of the behavior.
And that's awesome. How have instruction methods changed?
Well, they try everything they can try. I've written grants to receive money for programs that we've purchased. They're online. So I just feel like no matter what it is, the teachers are just trying to overcome it. They're doing it by paper and pencil and textbooks and worksheets, if that's all the family can do. So they're actually, I feel like they're doing double time. They're doing the virtual and the in-person. It's tough. So we've changed everything about what we do for instruction.
Wow. I see Christopher shaking his head. So
yeah. And one of the things that I really, on our special education programming in general, there's been, with our students who are included in the general education classes for some or most of the day, we have our co-teacher who's there and co-planning and working closely with the general education teacher, but often we have one or more paraprofessionals in the class also. And so now the paraprofessionals are saying, well, I'm one-to-one with this student who's virtual. What is my role right now? And we've been able to get creative in how they're supporting not only that child, but the other children who might be virtual. Sometimes there's a breakout room where that person is just going over something that students had missed. Sometimes it's that person troubleshooting tech issues, or it's that person, doing things on the Google Classroom side of it while the teacher's lecturing. So I think there's been a lot of room to expand some roles and expand some people's skill sets.
Absolutely.
A lot of fun to see happen for some people that, maybe were used to doing their role one particular way and felt pretty comfortable and maybe weren't challenged in trying a whole lot of new things, that now have opportunity to do so.
that is awesome. Has Hope Academy seen more inquiries since the pandemic?
Well, we still continue to see families coming to find a place that meets their child's needs. I had one today. She's very excited about coming and bringing her child even during a pandemic. Mm-hmm. She's going to come for testing before the winter break and start in January. So we still get those. But one of the challenges with that is many times the families have been furloughed from their jobs. during the COVID, and they can't afford, if they're a private pay student, they can't afford the tuition, because their income has decreased. So that's a challenge. Even if they want to come, sometimes that option is not there. We do provide some financial assistance, but the parent still has a portion to pay, and it's tough if you don't have a job.
Yeah, definitely. What kind of resources outside of maybe like Chromebook, are there outside resources for parents to kind of assist during the pandemic with their kids? Do you all, is there a list? I know initially when we first started with the pandemic, we did a webinar that, and we really kind of gave a list of parents, hey, if you need something to stimulate your child, and as we adjust to virtual, this is where you can go to find this, and this is where you can go. Is there something specialized more for the special needs students and their parents?
Well, Google Classroom has a tutorial that we make sure our parents know how to access. The kids and the parents can use that. So we put out what we find to allow them to gain some more knowledge and confidence in those programs. Mm-hmm. I think all students have a challenge with trying the new things.
Yeah.
Until they get adjusted to it.
One of the things that we've been trying to do more of is coordinating with service providers to see some of their students in their homes, particularly students who are 100% virtual. Our social worker has done a great job of providing wraparound services for students, particularly in the mental health area, but not exclusively, for students to be seen in their homes or other environments where they might be able to meet safely. And our social worker, I guess a few agencies locally that she had been historically referring families to and helping them through the process have quite a backlog, as you can imagine. And she's recently been able to work with other groups that don't have quite as long of a wait list. So we've been able to get a faster return for some of our students and families to make sure that they have that critical service.
We've also had our counselor do virtual counseling sessions with kids that are stressed out. And some parents who are stressed out. Yeah. We also have a social worker intern here, and she's done the same. And she's kind of looking around the campus for those who are here to see who looks like they need a little, help. So she's providing that. It's been great.
What kind of feedback have you all been getting from parents? Is it getting better, or is it? Because I imagine in the beginning it was a shock. So
well. I think it's got to be better than in March because none of us knew what we were doing. I mean, that was just like fly by the seat of your pants with no warning. Mm-hmm. So we've learned lots of skills since then. And so it's much easier to provide it. I just don't know that having that teacher right there with the child isn't the best thing, though. It's tough.
I was reading an article a couple of days ago that talked about the concern because the child is virtual and because I guess the stimulation that a child gets when the teacher can tap on the desk if they're distracted, or bring them back to center. I think the author referred to it, and it's just I think it's phenomenal that the education community and you all have been able to make such adjustments, because it's hard. It's hard for me with Zoom calls. It is, but it is your safety first. We have to be safe, but I can only imagine. I can only imagine the adjustment, and then for parents trying to make sure that they have a balance, and that they, many parents are going back to work now, and in spite of a lot of different things. So balancing that, making sure that if their child is at home, that they can still receive the attention that they need, and I guess I'll ask you all: is there anything that you can tell parents about achieving that balance and doing, and working as we continue to work through this?
I've taken a lot of phone calls from parents, trying to talk them off the ledge. Some crying, saying, I just can't do it, and I said, it's okay. Do the best you can, That's all we can do. The other problem with this is that the socialization for some of these kids, especially on the autism spectrum, that part is missing. And I saw a wonderful thing happen in one of our teachers' classrooms. I went in and they had the Google Classroom on the screen and the kids in the classroom. And one of the little girls, who's our cheerleader, told one of the other little girls on the screen, go get your pom-poms. And they did a little cheer. It's those kind of things. They miss that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And so that helps make everybody feel a little more comfortable. They have to have that social interaction.
And I was certainly going to ask how important was socialization, and the fact that it's limited now. Right. What kind of effect has that had on some of your students?
We're really encouraging our teachers to do more community-oriented things, both with their students who are in person and with their students who are virtual. So we have our daily homeroom like we would in a regular typical school day. We have our social emotional learning curriculum that we're using, and trying to practice those skills just to make the the student's experience feel more traditional, and making sure that they still feel like even if they're at home, they're part of a class, and that they have friends and they have teachers who care about them. I did want to speak on sort of the parent piece of it. My experience with parents a lot of times is just to try to listen and just to be a sympathetic ear. A lot of times, I think we have a lot of parents that have, for whatever reason, have opted to keep their students virtual, and that would love to send their kids back, but there's probably something that we don't know, that a high risk factor, they're caring for someone else who's at a high risk group, or whatever the case may be. And so the parent is doing the best they can at home there, whatever the situation may be. And so sometimes they say like, I keep getting these calls that he's not online, I can't help him, and there's no one home right now, and and like sometimes just to tell them, like, you're making the best decision you can for your child, and we support your decision. We need to do a little bit more. We need to work on something, but no one's criticizing you as a parent. Like, we all believe that you want what's best for your child, and you're making the best decision that you can right now.
We have a question/comment from a parent, and this is someone that Miss Stone, Amy Crane, who says, asking if you remember Austin.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I hope he's doing well.
Yeah. And she says her youngest has been diagnosed with autism, but they're doing well, doing virtual school. He's a senior, and virtual school's been fantastic. School has an IEP. He gets extra time, special ed classes.
Great.
And so it seems like it's going well, and she stays home with him.
It's been a while since I've seen that family, but they're always my kids. That doesn't go away. I'm glad to hear from y'all.
So thank you for sharing. We talked about some of the challenges, and outside of getting to school on time and maybe not getting bullied, because I see that parent mentioned something about bullying also. What are the positives of doing it virtually? Can you think of?
Well, do you have any others?
No. I yield to the experts.
Well, we have one young lady who has a lot of social anxiety, and she's doing an excellent job learning virtually because the pressure's off. She doesn't have to worry about other people. She can just deal with what she's doing. We have a couple of students like that it has been a benefit for them to be by themselves, to be able to concentrate on that and not worry about others, especially if they didn't get along well socially to begin with. So we have it both ways.
So what if we have a parent watching who is not, especially in the Baton Rouge and New Orleans area, they like what they're hearing from both of your schools. What advice would you give them in searching for a school if they think their child may need such an environment? I know it's a tough search, but how do they start? Where do they go? What's the first stop?
My first suggestion would be to work with the school you're at currently, reconvene the IEP team, and ask these types of questions. If you're hearing about a student who might be on the autism spectrum who is thriving in a virtual setting, and you think that might be the right move for your child, ask those questions. Give your current school a chance to provide some of these services, or approximate them as best you can. I try to end every IEP meeting encouraging families to, reconvene as often as they feel necessary. If we need to do it every month, we'll do it every month. And I think that would be my first suggestion would be just to make sure that you're as informed and involved as you're able to be.
Right. Google search tells a lot, but when you visit a place, you get the atmosphere, you feel the vibe. And I think that I've heard that many times when people come to Hope Academy. It just feels like home. It feels right. So if you're looking for something like that for your child, you can look on the internet all day long, but until you actually meet with the personnel and experience it in person, it's hard to really know.
And the just as a mention, the application period for the Louisiana Scholarship Program is about to open statewide. And for parents who are searching for a scholarship school, if they look at the application guide on the state's website, each school will list what special services they can actually provide. Now, not all schools in the scholarship program do that, but the ones that do, they will list it. So that's a resource and an opportunity that's out there from the state.
And I'm going to encourage our viewers too to ask questions. We have two phenomenal panelists that really, really have significant experience with what works, what can help, because we understand the challenges. So I encourage you to ask questions. Because that's what we're here for, so that you can get some additional information and things that may be helpful to, as we all continue in this journey.
And likewise, could we share our contact information at the end if people watch after the fact and then have questions, or we could share resources?
Yeah, what I'll do is I will put your contact information in the comment sections on both the YouTube and Facebook replays of this webinar.
That'd be great. Thank you.
And
go ahead, Paul.
If you need to contact Louisiana Federation for Children, you can see our web address scrolling at the bottom of the screen. So go to the website, and easy ways to contact us.
Well, I just want to thank both of you so much for agreeing to do this. It's always good to have the conversation. We always want to be on the side of giving parents what they need and giving educators what they need. And just the fact that we're able to get on here and talk about it, we are not alone. We are doing this thing, together. We are working through it. We are figuring it out. We are being creative. We're doing all kinds of things. And it's refreshing. It's refreshing that even though it's been a challenge, it's not been impossible. So right. I just want to thank you so very much for coming on and talking to us, and hopefully giving somebody some information that they really were looking for.
Happy to help. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And that concludes our webinar.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.